Guidance is internal. Ignition sequence starts. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. All engine running. Liftoff. We have a liftoff.
Permission to board. Permission to come aboard. Permission to board. Permission to bring me aboard. Permission to come aboard.
Welcome to the Permission Granted podcast. Here's DA.
All right, welcome inside the latest edition of the Permission Granted podcast, everybody. Thanks so much. Sweet melodic sounds. Sounds. So, we have full shows, podcastable, of course, on this very same feed, but also this is the off-air weekly podcast, and baseball season is here. Spring has sprung. I know that this week we've had calls coming in from somewhere, usually cold climes, some places that you'd think were still frozen under, but had calls from Columbus, Ohio, and Lansing, Michigan this week saying, I'm golfing, DA. And then finally on Thursday, the warm weather hit us here in the Northeast. Had temperatures in the 60s, so it finally feels like spring in all these Arctic of polar vortex places, and that means the baseball's here. So next week, actually Sunday Night Baseball is going to once again kick off the season, and I just hate this from baseball standpoint. I just think it's the stupidest thing ever to have Sunday Night Baseball kick things off, and then Mondays, and then Tuesdays. Just so dumb. What they should do is have one day Monday where everything, opening day is uniform and across the board, and it would be great if it was all at one time. Like the way they're doing game 162, all first pitch at the same time simultaneously, I think that would be awesome, like a bonanza. But if you didn't do that, why not stagger them throughout the entire day by like an hour so that fans could sit in front of it like the tournament and just watch game after game after game? I just think baseball kind of loses what opening day could be, this bonanza, by having Sunday night and a little Monday and a little Monday night and this and that. I mean, come on. Anyway, one of my good friends, Jeff Passan, writes for Yahoo Sports, and he covers Major League Baseball, and he's also working on a book that is forthcoming on the destruction of pitching arms. And it's kind of crazy. I mean, once again, this spring training, we saw guys go down. And every year, you know, in the middle of the season, somebody's going to blow out an elbow, blow out a shoulder. They're going to get Tommy John. You've got guys like Masahiro Tanaka that you just are expecting to, I guess, just pitch injured their entire careers. It's crazy. It's really crazy. So he's working on that. So I want to ask him about that. And then also kind of get the context of the baseball season and where baseball is, because it's at a weird point. You know, when I was growing up in the mid to late 80s, you know, baseball was still a huge thing, a national talk conversation topic. And now, 30 years later, baseball is very strong locally, but nationally, it's weakening by the year. All-Star game ratings keep going down. Playoff ratings, World Series ratings continue to splinter. And I know just from doing this job, when I open up the phones and I want to hear from you guys and we want to discuss something real meaty, I'll tell you what it's going to be. It's almost always going to be NFL, college football, or NBA related. Those are the real big leagues that are talk topics. Now in March Madness, we talk college basketball. We don't talk college basketball outside of March in a lot of ways. Hockey playoffs, once the playoffs start, we'll talk about that. But, you know, we don't battle back and forth here in this country about Sidney Crosby versus Ovechkin or whatnot. You know, that's just not what we do. And baseball's fallen into that, in that ravine. And I'm sure you're listening going, oh, you're crazy, DA, because, you know, I'm listening all the time to my sports talk radio station, and we're talking about the A's all the time, or we're talking about the Orioles all the time. And that's true. Here in New York, WFAN is a tradition, the first sports radio station ever. They'll talk Mets and Yankees till they're blue in the face. I mean, forever, still. But you're not going to hear a lot of conversation in any of those places about, well, what do you think about this crazy offseason the Padres had? Or can Jose Abreu hit 40 home runs or 50 home runs? Or, you know, what's going on with the Marlins? I mean, why would Giancarlo Stanton re-sign there? What did they sell him? Or are we buying the Mariners? that doesn't happen outside of those areas. And so baseball's in a weird place. It's in a weird place of trying to get a more general attention on bigger talk topics and stories to drive national attention versus just local. So I thought Jeff would be a great guest to talk about that and those types of issues. So he joins us on the road right now as he's driving in between spring training stops down in Florida. You can always follow Jeff Passan on Twitter at Jeff Passan and read him at yahoosports.com. Jeff, what's going on, my man? How are you?
Doing well, my friend. How about yourself?
I'm doing good. Now, how many spring training games would you say you've taken in over the course of this month?
Oh, God, probably not enough. Spring training games, I'm not trying to sound like a sports writer who doesn't love his job, because I do, but some spring training games are just miserable. When you have, minor league players out there and all the good players are, back at the complex, they didn't want to go on the road, the games themselves don't really show me a whole lot. Like, spring training to me is just an exercise in, A, getting in shape, and B, the fans getting to see people who they haven't seen for 4 or 5 months, which is never a bad thing.
I understand that the baseball season is long, but do we really need 25 to 30 spring training games? I mean, why do baseball teams need a full month of games every day to cut a few pounds off of their winter weight?
They don't. And there's been some stuff written this spring about it, and I vehemently agree with it. It's amazing to me that we're still stuck in this whole anachronistic spring training mindset where you use spring training to get in shape. No, players modern athletes come to spring training in shape right now. There's no question about that. Guys have to stretch their arms out a little bit, but it doesn't take as long as it used to. You don't have to build up as much arm strength because the majority of guys are still throwing in the off season. And so what you end up having is a bunch of players who don't want to be there anymore, who are kind of apathetic toward it. And Evan Grant of the Dallas Morning News, I thought, had a great idea. You have young players show up earlier. Those young players play in the first 5 or 10 games, if you want to keep getting that revenue source and those revenue streams going. And then you have the big stars show up at the end and get ready for the season that way.
Rob Manfred says he's open to shortening the baseball season. What do you think about that?
I think I need to see that in order to believe it. Because if you shorten the baseball season, that means that you are going to be cutting back on revenue. And if there's one thing that we have seen from Major League Baseball throughout the years, it doesn't like interrupting its revenue streams. And so if they're going to cut it back to 154 games, for example, they're going to have to make it up somewhere else. And I'm not sure that they're going to be able to make up all those gates, all the concessions, all the parking, and all the ancillary income that comes in with a typical baseball game.
So that's interesting, because if you go from 162 to 154, it's only an extra 8 games, presumably 4 home games. You're saying there's no way to make up the revenue of 4 home games?
Oh, I think there's plenty of ways to make it up. I'm just not sure that anything is palatable. I don't know that baseball is gonna be okay with giving up millions of dollars. I mean, I know that in the grand scheme of things, it's not a significant amount of money considering that baseball is a $10 billion industry. But at the same time, if you're going to a millionaire or a billionaire and saying we're going to take millions of dollars out of your pocket, well, that's millions of dollars less that they are going to have. And so it's going to be difficult to look at it being made up somewhere else when you can say, well, why didn't you just do this in the first place? Why was this make-up money?
Well, I want to talk to you about an angle, dynamic piece of the baseball tapestry now that's very close to what you've been doing, a lot of research on the arms of pitchers in baseball, blowing them out, Tommy John missing years, etc. We had Sandy Alderson, general manager of the Mets, who lost another arm this year after Matt Harvey last season. This year, it's Zach Wheeler. And he said essentially you got to come into every season assuming you're going to lose about 20% of your pitching staff to season-ending arm surgeries. Are we at the point where you're just everybody's kind of defeated and just expecting this to happen? Or is there a fight amongst general managers and scouts and executives, hey, we've got to figure out solutions to this instead of just kind of accepting it?
I don't know that those two are necessarily mutually exclusive. I think that right now where baseball is resigned to this. And it's a sad place to be, let me tell you. I mean, I've immersed myself in this subject for 3 years now, and I've watched guys firsthand coming back from this. It's not like Tommy John surgery is just you get cut and you get better. I mean, there's mental and physical hurdles abound with this. And so it's not an easy thing to do. And not only that, losing some of the names that they have. You talk about Matt Harvey and Zach Wheeler, but Steven Strasburg and Jose Fernandez, and on and on and on. I mean, seemingly every great young pitcher. Michael Machuela from Duke, who could have been the number 1 overall pick in the draft this year, needs Tommy John surgery. Brady Aiken, the number 1 overall pick in the last draft, just had Tommy John surgery. So it is, I mean, when we use the word epidemic, it can be a dangerous word to use because it's such a loaded word, but it is true with what baseball is going through. And there are some people at the highest levels of Major League Baseball right now who are doing good work in order to try and figure it out. There's an injury database, and they have epidemiologists looking at it. And, you have the smartest doctors and scientists around trying to figure it out. But despite that, there's just nothing there at this point that you can say definitively is a cause. There are a lot of ideas, there are a lot of theories. I think that they're quite valid, but ultimately, are we ever going to have a time where players are not blowing out their elbows? I don't think so.
It's just crazy because we now live in an era in Major League Baseball where it's kind of this grim reaper that hangs over every great pitcher, and you just kind of assume it's coming. And it's not like we assume Aaron Rodgers is going to miss a season because he's thrown too many passes, or that we assume LeBron's going to miss a season because he shot too many jumpers. But we assume at some point in time every great pitcher will lose an entire season. So isn't it a really bizarre dynamic? It's like the guillotine hangs over everybody all the time, and you're just waiting to see when it drops, not if it drops.
Yeah, I mean, it's horrifying for baseball, and it's a problem because, look, ultimately, the most valuable thing in sports, and I am talking simply from a monetary perspective, the most valuable thing in sports is the pitching arm. More money is spent on pitching arms than any other position in any other sport. I think it was something like there was 10 times more spent on pitchers last year than every NFL quarterback combined. I mean, it's some ridiculous figure like that. And so when you have something that is as absolutely vital as the pitching arm, and in all likelihood it's going to break, whether it is because you throw hard or because you threw too much when you were a kid or any number of reasons, that's a scary, scary thought for baseball, and why baseball is right to be devoting the time and, frankly, should be devoting even more resources. I think one of the most frustrating parts in researching this book is recognizing that injury prevention is not looked at by teams as a sport-wide issue. It's looked at through individual silos because you feel like if you can get your pitchers healthy, then ultimately you might win some championships on account of it. And so instead of all 30 teams working together, you have 30 individual fiefdoms trying to figure this out. And when you ration out brain power like that as opposed to putting it together, the chances of finding something are far less likely.
On the field, which overhaul this offseason do you believe in more? Are you putting more stock into, the White Sox or the Padres?
Oh, boy. I think both of them are going to be improved. I think the White Sox are going to be more improved. The Padres, to me, have just they have the greatest spread, I think, as far as what they can be both good and bad in all of baseball. If the defensive issues, which I foresee for the Padres, don't bear fruit, they could very easily win in the low to mid-90s. I mean, the talent there is stunning as far as frontline starting pitching with Ross Cashner and Shields, and potential power with all the guys they got this offseason. I mean, the overall there has been great. But as far as just, steady Eddie consistency goes, I think the Samardzija, Cabrera, Robertson, LaRoche quartet, joining Jose Abreu and Chris Sale and the rest of the talented players they have in Chicago, with Micah Johnson coming up, a guy who has a chance to steal 40 or 50 bases this year. I mean, there's a lot working in the White Sox favor, and I think they have a chance to be a pretty good team.
And a lot of this comes with that second wild card because now teams don't feel like they're ever that far away. Looking at the Giants and the Royals going to the World Series last year as wild card teams, you've got to always feel like you're really one or two big trades, free agent acquisitions, what have you, breakout seasons from a player from getting there. So how different, you've covered this game for a long time, how different have maybe the last two off seasons felt simply because of the carrot of that second wild card making 2/3 of the league probably feel like, hey, we got a shot?
It's enormous. And I mean, I like baseball where you have a dominant team that can be one of those villains, I guess. I don't know if it's the Yankees, if it's the Red Sox, if it's the Dodgers, whoever it may be, but I love the dominant team. You just don't have any. Maybe the Washington Nationals, but they're starting the year off with Anthony Rendon or Denard Span and Jason Worth. I mean, it's not like they're starting the year off on a good note necessarily. So even the Nationals are a little bit vulnerable. But once you get beyond the Nationals, DA, you're talking about 20-something. I'm not exaggerating when I say that. 20-something teams with legitimate playoff aspirations. You know what that is? That's football. That's not baseball. And I guess that was Bud Selig's goal, to have similar parity, to have the idea that any team can do it any year. But over the slog of a 162-game season, the idea of a bunch of 82 to 86-win teams just does not appeal to me. And, I think the White Sox fall in there. I think the Padres fall in there. I think 20 other teams do. I mean, how many teams off the top of your head can you look at and say, I don't think this team has any chance of making the playoffs this year?
I mean, that's the funny thing. Now when I look at preseason prognostications in baseball, I don't look at who's projected to be best. I look at who's projected to be worst, because there's probably only 3 or 4 teams, maybe less, 2 or 3 teams that you really just put the nail in the coffin right now and say this season is over. Everybody else, you kind of say, well, kind of like football. If you could get to 8-8, you're in the discussion. And I know that it's not great for media members that want to see greatness, but I guess it's got to be better for fans because more fan bases feel like they got a crack at this, right?
I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're looking at it from the perspective of individual team fans, but I tend to look at everything in baseball at sort of a more worldly view. What is the baseball industry like right now? And maybe that's the wrong thing to do, because you're right. Baseball has turned into a completely parochial sport. You don't find many baseball fans out there anymore. What you find is Giants fans and Royals fans and Yankees fans and Dodgers fans and Red Sox fans and Cubs fans and so on and so forth. And so when you have the Phillies, they're going to suck this year. The Braves are going to be pretty bad this year too. Diamondbacks and Rockies probably won't be very good. Twins in all likelihood are going to struggle. Maybe the Astros and Rangers fall into that category, but beyond that, you got a lot of teams that believe they can make the playoffs. The entirety of the American League East, almost all of the American League Central, certainly all the National League Central, and almost all the National League West. So it's a pretty even game right now, and that hope, that desire, it can be false and it can be misleading. But if you go into the year thinking that your team has a shot, you're probably a pretty happy fan.
Yeah, and I think that's what the evolution of baseball has become with this. It's that because more fan bases feel better about their shot than ever, locally, baseball is very healthy, very good, very successful. Television revenue is very good locally, etc. But when you get nationally doing the show that I do, I know I can't just go to the phones and say, what do you think about the Nationals' chances this season? Or what do you think?
Nobody cares.
Or what do you think about the offseason of the White Sox or whatnot? It's just not a talk topic. In fact, it's hard to even get a talk topic going generally when you're in the playoffs, the NLCS, the ALCS, the World Series. So in some ways, when baseball says we're healthier than ever, they're not lying. I mean, local television revenue is as good as it's ever been, and fan interest is there. But nationally speaking, you could argue that it's never been weaker, right?
I don't think there's any question about that. And I have a column going up on this, right now, actually, about how baseball has to market. Because baseball's marketing right now, DA, is not good. I mean, if you go and look at it compared to the NBA, which is a star-making league, In the NFL, where the quarterbacks are always the stars, baseball has nothing. I mean, who's the last baseball player you saw in a commercial? And I know that's not the be-all, end-all of it, but an honest question, who's the last baseball player you saw in a commercial?
Oh, I think it's embarrassing because you could ask, 100 sports fans, pick out Clayton Kershaw, pick out Mike Trout, pick out Bryce Harper out of a lineup, and those are the three most dynamic players we've seen in generations, and most people couldn't figure out who they are.
Yeah, and there's Andrew McCutchen, and there's Yasiel Puig. I mean, there are guys, and that baseball's inability to market itself is far and away its greatest flaw right now. It's a true problem, and it's something that in that column that I wrote, I addressed how you do it and how baseball's going forward. And I think that actually got some pretty good ideas, but executing ideas is a whole lot different than prioritizing them.
Is that why Tom Werner actually got looks at being the next commissioner? I mean, I worked in Boston. Everybody in Boston thinks that Werner's a complete bozo, and yet he, that he was the brains behind the Cosby Show and television marketing. And so if baseball owners realized they needed to market the sport better, that he maybe could bring that. Is that why he got so far in a race that nobody thought he would get anywhere in?
Yeah, I think it was more going against Rob Manfred than for Tom Werner, but the point stands. This has been a topic that baseball knew it needed to address, and it's starting to address it right now. I spent the day with McCutchen while he was filming a television commercial, and there were a bunch of kids who came from his hometown with his father, who's the youth league coach there. And it was a great scene because these weren't just your average baseball fans. You know what the average baseball fan is? The 55-year-old white guy. And 55 might be light. I mean, I'm serious. Baseball's demographic these days is the worst demographic you can possibly have for future growth. For present business, it's not bad because 55-year-old white men buy things. But for future growth, if that is your average consumer right there, your business is dead in 20 years.
Yeah, kids. You and I are in our mid-30s, and we love baseball because when we were kids, baseball was the big thing. But today, certainly locally, as you mentioned, are there kids in San Francisco who are Giants fans or in St. Louis Cardinals fans or whatnot? Yes, that exists. But what do you think?
Well, you know what? You bring up an interesting point with San Francisco because Rob Manfred actually went to San Francisco this offseason and met with the Giants. Have you taken in a game at AT&T Park before?
No.
It's the atmosphere there is different than everywhere else in baseball. And granted, most of the games that I've gone to there have been playoff games, so the atmosphere is going to be great. Maybe I'm a little biased there. But the Giants have done a better job of marketing their team and their players than I think all other 29 teams in baseball combined. I mean, if you just think about the characters that they've had come out of there, whether it's, Pablo Sandoval is Kung Fu Panda, Tim Lincecum, Madison Bumgarner, Hunter Pence has become a star there after being in Philadelphia and Houston, two huge markets. Ultimately, Brian Wilson, a guy who had no business being a star of any kind, is in a freaking Taco Bell commercial. And why is that? I think the Giants just happen to do a really good job of engaging their crowd and of telling people that, this is your team and these are your people and we're going to introduce you to who they are. If you can tell me a single fact that you know about Mike Trout, I will be surprised. Like a single non-baseball fact. And the idea that the best player in baseball, the best player we have seen in a long time, nothing is known about him, it's a failure by baseball, and it's one that I think that it's beginning to acknowledge.
Yeah, it's almost like the hockey problem, and yet the hockey problem's different because it's a cultural thing in hockey. In hockey, you're not supposed to stand out above your team. You're supposed to do everything in unison.
Yeah. No, you know what? In baseball, though, it's the same way, too. I mean, they frown upon individuals being any different than the team, but ultimately, for the sake of the survival of the sport, and not just the survival. That's I think that's an exaggeration. But for the sake of the health of the sport, I think it's vital for baseball to let go of some of its past. Because you know what? That's the thing that's hindered baseball a lot. I think ultimately, it's that baseball is so married to its past that sometimes it has trouble getting into the present.
Yeah, and it's the Yasiel Puig problem. It's that there is so many people in the league that resent Puig and want to see him shut up and stop showboating and all this, and yet Puig is kind of a modern-day Deion Sanders, where, that is, in 20 years, you want kids going, man, I used to love watching Puig because that guy was just all flash, and he could get it done, and he was great, and he showboated. A lot of kids love that type of stuff, but insularly in baseball, it's like Puig is the enemy every single day.
Yeah, for my book, I went to a tournament with 10-year-old kids recently just to see what it's like and how they're being thrown and how much they're pitching. And I was shocked at the number of kids who were wearing the number 66 on their jersey. I think there were 8 teams playing that day, and 5 or 6 of them had kids who wore 66.
Kind of not surprising because of the style of play, and that's why, I don't know. It's like I hear this, well, there's a code of the game, and you shouldn't do this. You got to respect the game and all that stuff, which to a certain point I agree with. But to a certain point, I feel like it's suffocating to the game itself and the identities of the players and the excitement level, because it's like you can't hit a home run and celebrate anymore. It's like not allowed.
No, it's not allowed at all. And it's too bad that there are people out there who want to play police. And that should stop, because if there are people out there who are resonating with fans, you do not stifle that. You encourage it. You don't bend that to your will as a sport, trying to uphold some sort of code that grew in a time long ago. You evolve. And what do they say? If you don't evolve,
you die.
You die.
Yeah. Let me ask, offense is obviously way down. Pitching is way up. Does baseball have a concern about this, or do they just feel it's the natural pendulum swing over time in the sport?
There's definitely a concern about it, and I think we're going to see it ultimately manifest itself in the years going ahead, because strike zone's got to change. It started, they moved it lower in order to try and balance it out and even it out, because the low strike simply, the strike at the knees wasn't being called, and eventually it was exaggerated to where it is now, which is the hollow of the knees. That's not a good place for a strike zone to be. Low balls are tough to hit. It's very advantageous to pitchers, and I think that's something that needs to be and is going to be remedied. But ultimately, that runs into conflict with another thing Rob Manfred wants to do, which is speed up the game. And faster game is, to me, a whole lot more appealing to the kids that you're trying to get than the slow, plodding 3.5-hour bore fests that sometimes passes baseball games.
Well, no question. And to me, even look, it's not that I'm asking for, 10 to 8 ball games in 2 hours and 10 minutes. All I'm asking for is some reasonable window to watch baseball. And I feel like, it's crazy to even suggest this. And to me, a 2-1 game is fine as long as we play 2-1 in 2 hours and 20 minutes. But when a 2-1 game becomes 3 hours and 10 minutes, then this is a problem. So in my mind, it's not even really the offense. It's that these games drag on and on and on, and baseball has to understand this, right?
Baseball understands it, but the problem is you've got hardcore fans who say, I love baseball no matter what, and who cares? It's a baseball game. It's going to be long. And I think it's a self-defeating attitude. And look, I love baseball. I think it's a great sport. But I think the game right now is at the point where it's threatening to lose people who want to go and see it. And I think people go see baseball more these days for, giant freaking bacon-wrapped hot dogs and churro dogs at the stadium and hamburgers with 9 patties on it than they do the actual game itself. And that's fine, However you can get them to the ballpark, go ahead and do you. It just saddens me that it takes, freak food to get people out to the ballpark instead of going out and enjoying a game that should be enjoyed, if not for its own, its own issues.
That's a great point, because when we talk about all these mutated food items, it's never like at a Sixers game. You're never getting it at a Maple Leafs game. It's always at a baseball game where you have a fried slab of ribs on top of 17 pieces of Italian bread with like French fries and chocolate sauce on it. You're like, wait, this is baseball now?
You know what? I'm actually looking forward to going to the ballpark with you and splitting one of those.
All right, I want to do a couple of quick hitters with you, so you don't have to be long on this stuff, but I do just want to get some thoughts on you. Number one, PEDs. Do you feel like it's a problem anymore in baseball?
Yeah, it's always going to be a problem in baseball, but it's like it is in football.
It's not a big a problem as it is in football. You said
it never was as big a problem as it's been in football. I mean, that's the amazing thing to me about this, that football has skated on this for as long as it has. I mean, every time, what's that guy with the Redskins? Oh, LaRon Landry. Every time I look at a picture of LaRon Landry, I think it's photoshopped. And the fact that guy played like 7 years before getting popped amazes me.
Boston Red Sox swing back and forth each and every year. Last year, bad. This year, good?
Decent. They don't have pitching. They're going to hit the crap out of the ball, though. And in this era, when no one's hitting, they have a chance to win some games, even with a mediocre starting pitching and a questionable bullpen.
Yankees will be boring and a non-playoff team. True or false?
True.
Anywhere close to the postseason?
I mean, if everyone stays healthy, but I just don't think that's going to happen. I don't think Tanaka's going to stay healthy. I wonder about Sabathia. Pineda's never stayed healthy, so there are questions about him. And beyond that, the lineup is old. It's not a well-constructed team right now. They have a chance because everyone has a chance, but everything has to go right for the Yankees to make the playoffs.
Best team in the AL Central?
Cleveland. And that's based on their starting pitching. I think Trevor Bauer is going to be, if not the breakout pitcher of the year, then a breakout pitcher. Carlos Carrasco was that guy in the second half last year. Corey Kluber won the Cy Young over Felix Hernandez last year, says all you need to know. And I think they hit just enough. Their bullpen has a chance to be great, though. Cody Allen, if you want a fantasy sleeper pick, he is your guy.
Seattle's a trendy pick out west. You buying on the Mariners?
I'm not right now, but I could see a scenario in which they're really good. I'm just not 100% sold on them at this point. I don't know if they're going to hit. I don't know that Nelson Cruz is going to be very good this year, especially in a ballpark that kills right-handed power. I'm not fully in on the Mariners. I have them there sort of on the edge of the wild card. I know a lot of people are picking them to be the best team in the AL. Not me.
Nationals. Do they have a legitimate shot to win 100 games?
No, I think I had them at 99, actually. But
they'll never squeak out 100 then.
Well, look, you asked.
Okay,
I mean,
all right.
I was not going to contradict my prediction.
Okay, that's fair. The Chicago Cubs, obviously, a lot of buzz this year. Is it a little too soon to be expecting the Cubs in the playoffs?
I think so. I think they're a good team this year. I think they're an above 500 team. I think Chris Bryant's going to be brilliant when he makes it up. But ultimately, I still think they're probably a year or so away. They need another pitcher. If they can get another front-end starting pitcher, and Jake Arrieta's, the quarters as good this year as he was last year, John Lester is John Lester, they have a chance to win pennants for a while. I mean, multiple, not just, squeaking by 1 year. That's how good this team can be.
Give me your thoughts on the Pirates, because Pittsburgh is dying for this Pirates team to make some noise finally in the postseason. They get there, but they're not advancing. Can they do that?
Oh, yeah. I think they very easily can do that. And they have a great farm system, too. The Pirates have been about as good at building their organization as anybody over the last few years. They've done a really, really good job, an admirable job, and not only are they good, but they're young, too. McCutcheon's McCutcheon's in his 20s. I think he's 28 years old. Gregory Polanco is going to be full-time this year. Another young guy, Starling Marte. They've got a potentially dynamic outfield. Pedro Alvarez, I think, is in line for a big year home run-wise. They've got some good young pitching in minor leagues, too. So Pirates are doing it the right way. Even without Russell Martin, I think they're going to be good.
Finally, the Los Angeles Dodgers kind of taking a step away from just collecting huge names and huge salaries. Do you think this helps or hurts them this year?
I think it positions them over the long term to be better and be more efficient. They're getting deeper now, and I think they're using their money intelligently. But don't get me wrong, they're going to spend, and they're going to spend like crazy at some point. It's just a matter of on who and when. And I think this next offseason, BA, is going to be one of the greatest free agency classes baseball has ever seen, with the number of starting pitchers going out there, and Hayward and Upton and other very good position players. We have a chance to see an absurd amount of money spent.
Jeff Passan, follow him on Twitter at Jeff Passan, Major League Baseball columnist for Yahoo Sports, and he's got this incredible book that is cooking on what is going on with the arms and all of these blown out elbows and shoulders and everything that's going on with young pitchers in baseball. So it's cooking, it's coming. You got to keep an eye on it. But follow him on Twitter in the meantime at Jeff Passan, and look for the YahooSports.com column. Is that already up, or is that coming forthcoming on the season?
I believe it is up. So, yes, keep an if not, it will be up very soon, and keep an eye out.
All right, Jeff, drive safe and travel safe, and we may see you over at Yankee Stadium for opening day, bud.
I hope so, my friend. Take care.
All right, welcome into Side B of the Permission Granted podcast. As always, your host of Side B, the executive producer of the DA Show, Sean Mraz, joined for the first time in a long time on the podcast, quite a few weeks, by associate producer Jimmy James Cool Kid Ward. James, what's going on?
Yeah, I feel like you guys have been icing me out of the podcast.
It's been really crazy. We've been giving way too much run lately to Steve-O, Planet Steve-O Moralia, who we're going to get into here in a little bit, who is fallen off the rails recently. And I finally, on Tuesday night on the show, I had it with him. But we'll talk about that with you in a second. DA, great interview with Jeff Passan, previewing everything you need to know about this baseball season. James, I know you're a big baseball guy. Grew up with the baseball like me, a big Yankee fan like me. Are you pumped up for the season?
Yeah, I love baseball. I have a hard time picking between the Yankees and Giants as far as my favorite teams.
Really?
But I get more excited for opening day of the baseball season than I do for week one of the NFL season.
See, that's interesting. I think I get more excited for week one, but opening day in baseball still, to me, has its cachet more than opening day probably in any other sport, even if I get excited for the week one, because I think it's a sign of everything. It's a sign of, if you live in the Northeast, that the winter is over, even though it feels like it isn't over, and all that jazz. But then, oftentimes for me, the novelty in baseball runs off by like June, and then every game just seems like it doesn't matter in the middle of the summer to me, and then it gets really revved up again in August. I don't know if you get that same way, or you're as glued in June as you are in April.
I'm very into it for the entire 6-month season, but you think about the baseball season, 162 games.
Right.
Your favorite baseball team is almost with you every single night.
Yeah.
4 or 5 off days a month, you could literally plan on watching a baseball game every single night of the week from April till September.
It is crazy true. Now, the Yankees are probably one of the biggest swings and wins kind of teams going on this year. They could be absolutely dreadful and finish in last place, or they could win the AL East. As a Yankee fan, I just want to ask you your feelings. I'll be honest with you. Personally, I think the Yankees, too many questions to be answered, are going to end up stinking this year. Where do you think the Yankees land this year?
I'm not sure if I have a good pulse on the Yankees for this year. I think their success this year depends on how healthy Tanaka is going to be, how healthy Pineda is going to be, and whether or not CC Sabathia is a third or fourth guy in the rotation. If he can get his ERA under 4.5, if Tanaka makes 25, 30 starts, maybe misses a couple weeks here and there, Pineda pitches the full year, I think the Yankees could win 90 games. If neither of those happen, they could win 70.
See, I almost want to go back and count the amount of times you hit if there, because I think that's the center of the whole Yankee season, is if. And what you just mentioned about Tanaka is interesting, because you said, well, maybe Tanaka misses a couple weeks here or there. Tanaka with that elbow injury last year, where for some reason the Yankees decided that they shouldn't go with the Tommy John route and hope that it heals on its own. And apparently it did. He made a start late in the year, and he's looked okay in the spring. His velocity was off in his last start. I don't know how I feel about this. I feel like that's a ticking time bomb, and that the Yankees should have got it done, and he would have been out all this entire year, and that's an injury waiting to happen. I don't think there's going to come a portion where he's going to miss a week or two with other injuries. I think it's going to be all or nothing. I think he's going to go out there and he's going to make his 25, 30 starts, or that elbow is going to basically snap at some point and need the surgery anyway.
Yeah, but it's hard to really put a figure on it because the Yankees doctors, they said their suggestion was to let it heal a little bit. It was only a partial tear, so they didn't want to give him the surgery. Other guys have. I mean, Adam Wainwright pitched for 6 seasons with a partial tear.
That's the guy everybody keeps
That's
using.
the best case scenario.
Matt Harvey also had a partial tear, then had to get the Tommy John anyway.
Right.
I mean, and they had put that off a little bit too. So I don't know. I just
if he's healthy for the entire year, and if Pineda's healthy for the entire
then
year,
they have a great 1-2 punch.
Right, the Yankees win 90 games.
But again, if I just feel like when you're asking if that many times, you're asking for trouble.
But what other teams in the American League are sure things?
Well, that's what I want to get.
Everyone talks about the Nationals. They improved their team immensely. They won 96 games last year. But what American League team is a good bet?
See, I think when you look around and you see the fact that the Giants lost their Big Bopper and Pablo Sandoval, and you expect them probably to take a step back now, and you really take the pulse of both the American and National Leagues, this is as wide open a Major League Baseball season, kind of like the NBA was going into the year with LeBron leaving the Heat, as I can remember in a long time. It's throwing at a dartboard here to figure out who's going to land where in these divisions and who's going to end up in the World Series. I have a couple thoughts here, but I'll leave it to you. Do you got a couple predictions for us here?
I think the Nationals will win 100 games easily.
Right. They should, but then again, with them, it always comes to the playoffs.
I think that both Chicago teams can make the playoffs.
Yeah. I like the White Sox a lot in the American League
White Sox
Central.
improved a lot. You look at what the A's gave away for Jeff Samardzija. They got, 3 months of the season for him? And then I think the AL East, again, is going to be all 5 teams within 7 games of each other.
We'll do this whole game. Do you have a division winner for every division?
Yeah, I could give you a division. It may change in the next week, but I could give you a division
Let's try
winner.
to do this rapid fire. I'll give you my division, you know, 1 for 1. AL East.
Orioles.
You like the Orioles?
I think the Orioles are good.
I'm going to go with the Red Sox. I think the Red Sox make that jump way back, and I think they win the division. But their pitching is sketchy.
Pitching is very sketchy.
Very sketchy, but you know what? That's like shooting fish in a barrel in that division. You don't know what you're going to get out of it. I'll take the Red Sox. I don't like the Orioles at all, actually. And I can't trust the Blue Jays.
The thing with the Orioles is that they're consistent now under Showalter, but they don't really have a proven ace in the starting pitching rotation. But they're kind of becoming the Yankees and the Red Sox of 5-6 years ago. They're consistently, vying for the top spot in the AL East.
AL Central.
I think the Tigers. I think the Tigers, again, are the team to beat in the Central.
I feel like the Tigers take a step back. Maybe I'm crazy. I think losing Scherzer hurts. I'm going to go with the White Sox to win the entire division. I
could totally see that happening.
I definitely. How about the West, the AL West?
And what about the Royals? We talk about everyone's sweetheart from last year.
No,
I
James
think
Shields
they're definitely going to take a step back.
No James Shields hurts.
No, and they got by with a lot of smoke and mirrors last year. Everything was going right. They had all these young guys that started hitting all around the same time.
Right. A lot of those young guys, though, now they have the seasoning.
Yeah,
so
but I don't trust the Royals.
I don't either. I'll go with the White Sox to win the Central. You'll take the Tigers. What about the AL West?
Mariners.
Me too. I'm all aboard the Seattle Mariners train. I think they're the most polished team in that division. And what about 2 wild cards?
2 wild cards. Let's go with I got to go with the White Sox because I said that they make the playoffs. Right. I think they're a lot better. And let's go with the Yankees. Let's go with the homer pick. Yankees winning 90 games.
Wow.
Rotation's healthy the whole year.
Interesting. I will go with the Angels to win a wild card. I think they get there. And as my second wild card, I will go with the Orioles. The same thing with you with the Buck Showalter consistent. I think the Tigers missed the playoffs completely. I think the Royals missed the playoffs completely.
Yeah, we're in agreement with the Royals.
All right. National League. National League East, Nationals,
Nats.
Right? I'm going Nats too. National League Central.
Cardinals.
I'm going Cardinals too. Okay. National League West.
Dodgers.
Boy, we were right in sync with the National League. I'll go with the Dodgers. Your wild cards. You gonna go with the Cubs?
Yeah, Cubs.
Okay, and what about the other?
I think the other is going to be the Giants. I have a hard time seeing the Giants not making the playoffs. And I think the Padres will be the Eagles' dream team, spending all this money and still not making the playoffs.
I'm going to go with the Marlins to make the playoffs. I think the Marlins end up getting enough done.
Marlins are definitely a lot better than they were last year.
I think they win a wild card, and I'm in step with you with the Giants. Until the Giants are officially out, I cannot pick against them. Now we got a World Series? Come on, the fun of it.
For the fun of it, I think it'll either be the White Sox versus the Cubs or the Orioles versus the Nationals.
All right, I'm going to go. I think this is finally the year that the Dodgers make the World Series. And I think the Dodgers beat the Seattle Mariners in the World Series this
Little
year.
West Coast series?
How about that? Now I'm sure.
Little 11:05 Eastern time starts?
Why not? So that's where I'm going. I'm going Dodgers over Seattle, and you're giving me either the Chicago's or what was the other one you went with here?
So it's either going to be a Chicago. I don't know.
How about you just give me one?
Do the Cubs and the White Sox have like New York's the Subway Series, the Orioles, Nationals, Battle of Beltway?
Yeah, they have something there.
The South Side kids versus the North Side guys.
Something like that. The deep dish pizza. I'm sure the people in Chicago listening, if there are any out there, out there. I don't know what they'd call, and they'd kill us for it. But
it is called the Crosstown Classic, the Windy City Showdown, the Red Line Series.
Boy.
Some of these sound a little made up, so let's just go with the Windy City Showdown. That's the one I like the best.
Windy City. You give me some of their Italian beef, I'll make that city real windy in a second. That was probably disgusting. I apologize, podcast world. Swing and a miss on that joke. Anyway, speaking of swings and misses, I wanted to talk to you briefly before we let you go about Steve-O Moralia. I don't know if you've heard his mistakes on Tuesday nights on the show, which are considered his Friday since he's off on Wednesday and Thursday, have been astronomical. And I tell him one thing, he does something completely different, and he basically laughs it off. He admits his mistake. He doesn't argue with it. He doesn't come up with an excuse, and he goes, what are you going to do? We'll go get him. You've worked with Steve a long time. For our audience that don't know, you guys work on the weekends a lot together, and he was also the guy when you guys were rotating in the Mojo show and stuff. Give us some more. Now we're 3 months into Steve-O, and he's still making these mistakes. Should we expect these mistakes throughout the year from Steve-O?
One of the best parts of my job is that my work is always compared to Steve Moralia's.
So you think you look better to, let's say, bosses and to shows and to hosts because they're always looking at you and they're looking at you compared to Steve?
100%. My standing with Chris and Brian previously with Mojo, with DA and you on the DA show, and with the guys on the weekend, my work is always compared to Steve's. And
so you're using Steve's mistakes to climb up the ladder.
If I hit 275, I'm making the Hall of Fame.
Well, here's the problem with Steve-O. Steve-O could drive in 105 runs. He could hit you 30 homers, but he's going to bat 210. And
lots of strikeouts.
Right. You're right. He's the Curtis Granderson of board ops on the show. The guy is always swinging and missing in the big spot. But then when you're playing, basically the Astros on a Wednesday night, he comes up there, as we're using the baseball comparisons, and he goes 4 for 4 and is hitting against all this crap pitching and giving you a big effort. I can't figure out, Steve, to save my life.
See, I like to liken myself as a Martin Prado. Always get the job done, play a zillion positions.
Nothing flashy.
Solid hitter, nothing flashy. Steve-O's Nick Swisher.
He is. And to take a lot
loads up on the home runs against the ninth inning down 11-3. Garbage time.
He's the
even gets a couple strikeouts when he comes in to pitch. He could show you could do everything.
He's the NASCAR driver that'll crash his car trying to get first, like Ricky Bobby in Talladega Nights. It's unbelievable. But so that's interesting that you will use Steve and those comparisons with Steve to almost climb up the ladder yourself. And so I guess you've heard some of the same things. These aren't new things that you've heard about Steve Moralia.
No, not new at all.
Not new at all. And Mojo felt the same way with him. And it wasn't just all jokes.
Yeah, Moralia mentally checked out from 6 to 10 Eastern time. Monday, Tuesday, Friday.
It's unbelievable. It'd be one thing if he sucked all the time. That's what we're talking about. Steve will come in with we'll start the week with him on a Monday night. He'll have a great attitude about the show, and he'll be great at his job. And Friday to close the week, when it's his first day of the week, he's great too. It's something about these Tuesdays when he's ending his work week where, God, his head is in the clouds. You don't know where he is. And DA's nicknamed him on the show, Planet Steve. He's on a different planet, which goes with our mothership theme. It is unbelievable. I don't know what to make of it.
He's out there. He's not capable of doing a good job night in and night out.
Yeah, I think the Chicken Challenge is a perfect example of that too. Everybody, because Steve,
but no one thought he could do well.
Exactly, and then he ends up eating 50 nuggets. That's what we're talking about with Steve. His life is like a box of chocolates. You never know what you're going to get. And I think this has taken on an interesting storyline on the show. And I almost wish you were on the show 5 nights a week with Steve as well and me, working all three of us back there. So you could just really see this roller coaster because you have no idea what it's like when you step in here on Wednesday, Thursday. It's like a different show than when Steve's there. It's the circus act that's gone on is unbelievable. Yesterday, I don't remember being so stressed out as yesterday. We're taping this on Wednesday. I'm talking about Tuesday night show. As he made me, I used to be the nice guy, the guy that laughed, had a good time. Kenny, who used to work in the show, was the angry guy. The roles have become reversed, and I've become angry, frustrated, stressed out. I'm bald already, and I'm losing even more hair.
You can't lose any more hair.
I can lose more hair.
What was the haircut line from earlier today?
Well, I get one every 2 weeks.
No, but it's nice and quick. Nice quick haircut, right?
It is a quick haircut, but I like the conversation when I go into the barbershop.
You're a big barbershop guy.
I've never understood this. For the guys out there, I forget where DA lies on this. There's a lot of guys. DA might be a hairdresser guy. You're a hairdresser guy?
No, I love barbershops.
You like the barbershop.
I like to sit in, read the newspaper, watch what's on the TV, listen to conversation.
I don't get. I feel the same way. When I was younger, one of the favorite, father-son moments I had with my dad, when I was very young in Massapequa, Long Island, now in West Babylon, was always my father would go into the barbershop for the haircut. He would bring me along. And for as long as I can remember, I was never a crier in the chair. I always loved it because you felt like a guy. There was something about the Italian mafia pictures on the wall. Everybody in there talking sports. That's where they used to run the football cards out of when you used to make the football bets. And you just felt there was something about being a man in there. And, we'd be in there between waiting time, let's say the 20 minutes it took you to get a cut when I actually had hair, and then a little chit-chat after. You would say maybe you were in there an hour, maybe not. Maybe it was a little less, 45 minutes. But it was one of my favorite, 45 minutes of the month. It was something about it. And to this day, I no longer go with my father. He does his own thing. We're on different schedules. I have my own barbershop. There's something about that time going into a barbershop, even if I'm going bald, or even if I could shave my head myself, where I like that feeling. I don't understand the men who don't go to the barbershop.
One of my favorite things is getting a haircut.
It's an underrated feeling.
And then, because I know you keep it nice and tight in the back, nice and short.
When they bring that
the
straight
warm
razor,
shaving cream and the straight razor.
God, it's almost better than eating a frozen Milky Way.
It's close.
It's delicious.
And I got a haircut yesterday.
The haircut is delicious, but the Milky Way is too.
I got a haircut yesterday. I was actually sitting, waiting for the guy to get ready to cut my hair.
Right.
And I saw someone come in. How long is it going to be to get a haircut? 15, 20 minutes. The guy leaves.
Sit
down.
Wait.
Relax.
You're going to hear.
Enjoy company.
Other than actually seeing or watching a stand-up comedian, you will get some of the best jokes and the best stories just sitting and waiting until it's time for you to get your hair cut. The longer wait, the better for me. If I don't have anywhere to be, I could sit there for an hour and wait and hear these idiots about stories. It's great people watching because there'll always be some dope in there. And usually you have a lot of really good average Joes who got great stories, great stuff you could relate to, great conversation pieces. You won't find better conversation than you get in a barbershop. And maybe that's part of the reason I like sports radio, because it's kind of like a barbershop.
Right, a couple of guys sitting
affiliate.
around just BS and talking about sports.
It's great. It's absolutely great. So, yeah, as long as I have a sprinkling of hair somewhere around my head, I'm always going to go to the barbershop to get that clipped, and I don't care what I have to pay to do it, because it's about the experience. I can't stress that enough. So if you're a man, it's time to man up, get to the barbershop. That's what I say, James.
Got to go to a barbershop. So no man should get his hair cut at a salon.
No. So we've covered it all now. We gave you our World Series picks, our division picks. We talked about Moralia being an idiot. And we even finished on a note of talking about if you're a real man, you go to a barbershop.
Last barbershop note, Coming to America. Have you seen Coming to America?
Of course.
Well, you have these weird movies that you haven't seen.
You ever see Devil Wears Prada? Excellent. It's excellent.
That is actually not a bad movie. It was on HBO the other day, and I stopped and watched the rest of it.
Not a bad movie. Not a bad. A lot of
My
people
girlfriend
give it a bad
came
rap.
home and was like, "You're really watching this?" Yeah, it's not bad.
D Wears P. Excellent movie.
D Wears P.
But yes, excellent. So, you have anything else you wanted to add there?
No,
Coming to America.
Good barbershop scene featuring Eddie Murphy, not the former first baseman for the Baltimore Orioles.
You're really tying in the baseball here.
Just keep going back to baseball. That whole scene is 8 or 9 characters with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall, and Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall.
It's hysterical.
And it's great.
You gotta love Coming to America. Well, that's going to do it for the Permission Granted podcast. Enjoy opening day, everybody. Remember, you subscribe to us on iTunes. Check us out on SoundCloud, youtube.com/The DA Show, facebook.com/The DA Show. Check out our CBS Sports Radio website, daoncbs.com. You can follow me on Twitter at MarazCBS.
James Ward, CBS.
Let's get James's follower count up. That's a quest we're trying to make here before the end of 2015.
Please.
Enjoy opening day, everybody. Take care. Thanks for listening.